Finally, his Aunt Simone came home, and after asking her son why he was hanging in front of the screen again, she gave Sid a short embrace. Good that you finally come visit us again, even if it's just for such a short time. They drove over to the kindergarten across the street that was housed in a little building surrounded by grey concrete to pick up Maya. She was sick and a little scared of the tall, dark stranger that had come along to take her home. Who's that? It's your cousin Sid. Well, she doesn't remember you anymore from the last time you were here, Simone said, and Sid began to hear the cry of his conscience, complaining that he left his family alone in this hopeless grey town. But on their way back, they dropped by the house they had begun to renovate shortly before his uncle's death. Simone showed him around the bright, colorful rooms and told him they had considered selling the house for some time, but eventually decided to move in this summer. This is all too big for just the three of us, she kept repeating as she showed him around. They drove back to the small flat they still called their home. Ben went out to play soccer with a neighbor's child, and Sid and Simone sat down in the kitchen. Simone asked him what he would do this summer, hinting again at the possibility that he would come back to visit them. Or are you going to travel? Maybe, Sid answered, and told her that he had been camping a few times in the last few weeks. Alone? Simone asked, and went on to say, I used to be alone quite often as well when I was younger, and I didn't really mind. But you get used to being with someone, and in the end it's always better than being alone. Did you have plans to do anything with your ex-girlfriend before? With a heavy heart, Sid told her that they had vaguely talked about traveling south together, apart from going to the festival he was now heading for. Ben returned, and they began to play with the little plastic bricks Sid had spent most of his childhood with as well. After dinner, Simone asked if he could show them the recording of his theater performance, and got out her laptop, into which she plugged his flash drive with a film. But his grandmother was still busy in the kitchen, and so Ben began to browse through the other video files on the computer. After watching a film of his sister shortly after her birth, he found a film of a day they had spent on a frozen lake 2 years ago, when his father had still been alive. I can't watch this, Simone exclaimed, and went back into the kitchen. But after a few minutes she returned and sat down next to her son, who watched himself gliding on the ice next to his father, with a smile on his face that was pure, unbroken by mourning or sadness. Sid could see the reflection of his aunt's face in the screen, as she watched herself repeating all those foolish jokes you make when you find yourself in a sudden situation of happiness. She looked miserable and bitter, and it almost drove Sid to tears. I mostly filmed Ben. If I'd only known, then I would have filmed more of him, Simone lamented, and when she heard her firmer self proclaim, I'm capturing this for eternity, she let out a silent sigh of sorrow. The video ended with the fleeting figures of Ben and his father above their reflections on the ice, going off towards the horizon, slowly getting more and more out of focus. Now show us your play here already, Simone demanded, and so Sid pressed play, and the screen displayed their performance again. His little cousin and his grandmother were somewhat confused by the actions on the screen, and Ben soon began to yawn and asked how much longer the play would last and when he would finally be able to use the laptop to watch an animated series that had been developed on the basis of a movie from the last century in order to reel in a new generation of consumers for the various toys and other paraphernalia of its universe. Ironically, the films had dealt quite a lot with death and father figures. When his mother finally told Ben to turn off the machine and go to sleep, he asked Sid whether he would go to bed with him. Sid had planned to use some time of the night to write or maybe even escape these walls and go for a walk down to the nearby lake, but the whole day had worn him out so much that he simply agreed and went along to brush his teeth. When he read Ben a few goodnight stories and picture books with little poems next to the images of gnomes and elves, memories of her finally flooded his mind again. He remembered how she had started to read him the stories of her childhood and how he had made her a picture book of their transformation into werewolf and bullfrog. As he thought of it, he felt sick again and began to choke. Ben gave him an irritated look and said, "Come on, keep reading." Sid finished the story, kissed his little cousin goodnight, and lay down on the floor at his foot end. He felt like crying himself to sleep. Over her, over his dead uncle, over his ill grandmother. But as he stared outside into the gray clouds that slowly turned black, he could not even get himself to lose a single tear. He just lay there for an indefinite time, listening to his little cousin breathing and shivering, shaken by his dreams every once in a while. Finally, Sid got out his touchwriter and began to write. The little boy suddenly found himself in some strange kind of forest, the edges of his field of vision blurry, containing the constant possibility to morph into somewhere completely different. Suddenly he realized he was chasing something, trying to find something all along. The environment suddenly felt strangely familiar, and he was sure he would finally find what he was looking for all this time, here. There was a corner behind which it should be, always had been. His heart filled with joy as he passed around it. He started running, reached out his arms, but there was nothing there. He had been so sure. It should have been there. It had always been there. The setting was familiar, but something was drastically different, and somehow that made him endlessly sad and angry at the same time. Suddenly he heard a sound behind his back. and as he turned around, he had the feeling he had seen something scurrying away. He hesitantly followed the movement back into the deep blue of the forest. He saw the movement again, chased after it through some thick brushes, and found himself on a plain field. In front of him was a little, colorful creature that seemed vaguely familiar from some Japanese cartoon world. Was this what he had been chasing all this time? The creature came closer and looked at him with its big eyes. Slowly the little boy approached it and extended his arm towards it. Just as he was about to touch it, a powerful grumbling sound arose from it. The ground beneath him seeming to begin to shake, and the creature started to grow and morph before him. His big, friendly eyes turned into little rat slits, and claws and teeth started to appear. With a loud roar, the creature jumped forward and seemed to try to grab the little boy, who turned around and started running back into the forest. Back to that corner behind which there was supposed to be help. But he knew he was all alone, lost in this dark, twisted world. His fear attracted more of the giant creatures. They seemed to come from all sides, above and beneath, trying to capture him with their claws, to rip him apart. And there was nobody that could help him. At strangely slow speed, one of the creatures metamorphosized in front of him, towering higher and higher above, while opening its jaws, baring its sharp, deadly teeth. The little boy pressed his eyelids shut as hard as he could and started screaming, but somehow he knew that there was no one there who could hear him.